In the last video I talked about how there's lots of videos for how to make an original species, but almost none that show you what it's like after the species has been made. No one tells you what they've learned from making their original species, and that's what I'm doing with this series. A series of short casual videos where I give you tips about making original species by learning from my mistakes and successes. So take a listen and check out the species video for them on the end card. Then use that as an opportunity to study. Mera. This species would technically be my first original species. They were made before I made Mycos, before I made the VTuber model, and before I even started YouTube. They were originally made to be an adopt-only species, a cat creature with long tails that have a snake sock puppet and a goat sock puppet on them. I called them Pseudo-Mera, a portmanteau of pseudo and chimera, meaning false chimera. The idea is that they come from a place where spirits possess the tails of their hosts, and the host inherits features from the spirits possessing them. The idea never actually took off. No one wanted the two that I made, basically. So I shelved the idea until I learned about original species games like Chimerion, Bay Foxes, and Water Dogs. I saw how fun the game aspect could be, and I thought it would be the perfect community bonding tool, and it was, sort of. I made a lot of mistakes with this species that kind of soured me on the species as a whole. Sometimes when someone makes an original species, they'll make changes to them according to how the community wants them, and because of that, they stop feeling connected to their species. This sort of happened with Demon Lady and Wicker Beast, and what's their name? I think it's Lupai from Mochi Raptors. Something that started small and simple grew beyond their control because they gave too much control over the species to their community. Or they withheld too much in the case of Mochi Raptors. You gotta meet a good balance. You gotta let your audience have some control over it and let them feel like they're a part of it, while also maintaining a good portion of control for yourself. Similar happened to me, except it was all my fault. The main feature of the Mera is their possessed tails, so to add variety to them, each update I'd add a handful of new species that the spirits and hosts could be. It's a confusing system, but there isn't much I can do about it because of their design. As I added more species, I added the ones I was asked about the most, and with each addition, the species identity went further and further from the original design. Quickly, my pseudo-chimera became part fish, part bug, and you can mix those with the mammals and the reptiles, and I was too scared to tell people no. So my cute idea kind of turned into abominations. Now, the only thing I can do to fix them is to limit species to families where if you pick an insect host, the tails have to be insects too, or to redo the species. I also added boons, which are like mutations that make it so some spirits aren't even in the tail. Mera now are completely unrecognizable from what they were. Even if I restricted species to families, there would still be insect Mera and fish Mera that don't look like Mera. I love the art from all of them, but when I see an insect Mera, I don't see a Mera. They don't really feel like my species anymore, so I'm doing a redo of the species, probably around the anniversary. The other mistake I made with the species was the bond system, which is just a battle pass. Players earn points, and when they reach a threshold, they level up the bond and get a reward. It works fine, but we did all of this through Discord, and Discord wasn't really made for this. So a lot of this stuff was done by hand. Points, money, traits, master list entries, all handled through Discord by a handful of people copying and pasting the info. It runs horribly, and if the Discord went down tonight, there would be no trace of them. And all of this would just work so much better on something like Paper Demon. But I pitched the idea, and many hated the idea of moving to a new website. The majority are still in favor or indifferent, but there's a good portion still that don't like the idea of them moving. For them, a Discord where staff do everything is much more convenient than a site that they'd have to make a new login for, even though the site also does everything that the Discord would do, plus more. So, Mera is currently hard limited to what's possible with Discord, which isn't much. Anyway, the Battle Pass functioned, and people liked it, but it's too much to track, and it's a source of a lot of questions that I have answered a ton already. Removing it would get rid of a lot of annoyance, but even if I replaced it with a simpler system with the same rewards, some people would be upset. People don't like change, and while I never planned for Mera to last a long time, I don't think it'll last, more than a year as it exists in Discord. The important lesson I learned with Mera is that I need to learn to say no, and that you can't please everyone. Sometimes you need to make unpopular decisions, regardless of what everyone else thinks, for the health of the game. And I need to be pickier when I see a feature no other group has made. I need to think about whether or not there was a good reason to why others don't do it. I also learned that I need to think about the limitations of my species and where they're hosted. Mera should have been on Paper Demon from the beginning, but Mera only got as popular as it did because everyone has a Discord. So I'll say it again, if you make an art RPG or a closed species game, do not host it on Discord. There are too many systems, and even with Discord bot automation, it'll never be as good as a Lorekeeper or Paper Demon art RPG page. If I made Mera again, I would limit it to just the 3 species: cat, snake, goat, and then I would spend a lot more time on developing one new species at a time. I'd spend more time making sure the species is a quality addition, and not just me padding out a roster and trying to meet everyone's requests as fast as possible. I'd host them on Paper Demon, and I would do away with the Battle Pass and try to make changes to an existing system to make it similar to the Battle Pass, because the idea behind it is good. I made sure that every 3 months I'd introduce a new species, new stuff, new events, and more. Paper Demon would let me do that a lot more too, but I don't think this will ever happen. If I were to be 100% honest about what I think will happen with Mera, we'll either never move to Paper Demon, and if we did, the majority of the player base would drop off despite Paper Demon's many advantages and improvements. If we move to Paper Demon, Mera would continue to run. If it doesn't move, then I think it'll run until the website renews its subscription. Then I'll crowdfund the subscription fee, not raise enough money, then Mera would die there. Then I'd just re-release it on Paper Demon later after I've had a lot of time to fix it. The other option I recently came up with was to have them join Noms and their Paper Demon community. I wouldn't have to pay an extra subscription, and I asked people in Nomchromancy, and pretty much everyone likes the idea, as long as it makes sense within the lore. And that's very easy to do, because the Mera live in this bubble called the Veil. It's a space between the living world and the dead, with them serving as a sort of passageway. I always intended for Mera to leave the Veil and explore a larger outside world. In Nomchromancy, I was wanting to introduce cybernetics or mechanical prosthetics, and Mera would be a good way to do that. But yeah, another lesson. Keep your expectations realistic, and if you make big changes, make sure you can explain it with sensical lore. That's it for this one. Hopefully by sharing my mistakes and successes, I've helped you spot some of the things you need to work on yourself. Sometimes you won't be able to spot a bad idea until you follow through on the idea. So remember, it's better to make something than to let it sit in your head. 99% of projects and ideas don't ever see completion, so by just finishing it, you put yourself in the 1%. So good, bad, doesn't matter. You can't learn from it if you don't try. If you're watching a bunch of tip videos before you make your thing, instead consider allowing yourself to fail and just get started already. You need to learn how to fix things just as much as you need to learn how to make good things. Your thing doesn't need to be perfect, because there's always next time, and you can always fix your mistakes. And it's just that simple. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye. Thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon. Because of this, I can continue eating the classic human holiday cuisines, like Christmas trees. So thanks again to Mystic Mitsuki, Bait, Cryptid Artha, Sly, Colorado Blue, Linky, Kit Chimera, Vaderson, Series, and Malding Brick. Thank you all for being so awesome. It's been a great year, and I look forward to another one. Bye-bye.